Morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's edition of the MPC Markets Morning Call, 28th of April, 2026. Now, we sort of, investors are still focused very much on earnings. As the Strait of Hormuz is sort of a little bit like Schrodinger's cat. It's both open and closed. Essentially Tech's doing very well, semi's doing very well, although we did have a break in the SOX index, which is the Philadelphia Semiconductors Index, which managed to notch up 18 straight consecutive positive sessions until last night. There's not much talk around, the Strait of Hormuz and the Iran-US conflict at the moment, because they're all talking about the, apparent assassination attempt on members of Congress or the cabinet, US cabinet, and President Trump at the White House, White House Correspondents' Dinner. Trump used it as a platform to get the legal flies off his back in terms of the what I'm assuming will be called the Trump ballroom at the White House. And it was, he had a 60 minutes interview lined up as well. So, obviously there's a few, conspiracy theories floating around that every time he's in trouble, someone tries to assassinate the guy. That's the third attempt now. Whatever, I don't necessarily need to be buying into that. It's not really market related. There's no traffic going through the Strait of Hormuz. Basically, we're 58 days to normal supply. There's still a troop build-up. He's still talking tough, and then he's not talking tough, and then there's peace talks, and then he's talking tough again. So essentially, we are exactly where we were for the first 6 weeks. No one knows. Nvidia popped. Google, Micron, and Intel were probably the better performers overnight. We had a bit of a pullback in some of those, the chip manufacturing names like Lam Research. GE Vernova had a bit of a rest as well. Consumer staples drifted off a little, but really it was all about the tech names. But look, it eked out again at absolute best, I've got to say. No real indicators to, no real clear indicators to go off necessarily for the day ahead. Aussie was open yesterday. We ended it down slightly. As you can see, the S&P was up 0.1, the Dow was down 0.16, the Nasdaq was up 0.01, and the Russell was up 0.13, and that happened in the last, say, 3 minutes of the market. We've got a fair few central banks and huge amount of earnings this week. I think something along the lines of 30 trillion of the 60 trillion in the US major index, the S&P 500. 16 trillion from 5 of the Mag 7 alone. And we have I did hear on Bloomberg this morning, 18 central banks are meeting this week, of which, the RBA, not necessarily one of them, but we got Bank of England, Bank of Canada, Bank of Japan, and the FOMC particularly, which we'll be probably paying a fair bit of attention to. Gold was off slightly. Silver was off slightly as well. Oil, crude still doing fairly well. WTI at 96.5. It was there yesterday morning, so that's kind of already priced into the market. Here in Australia, we had a public holiday for most of the states, but not all of the states. And so the market was open yesterday, albeit very quiet, very thin. These industrial metals drifted a little bit lower, but it's just this balance at the moment between, oil obviously not budging at 96.5 and Brent at 102, and then physical markets well above that in the Middle East, and we're really not looking like we're any closer to any form of deal. We do have US GDP numbers, advanced GDP numbers this week, which are usually pretty volatile. I had this in the morning call yesterday morning, but for those of you who are New South Wales, and Victoria, ACT, etc., based that weren't watching markets yesterday, the forward PEs of the mega caps that are reporting this week are basically, around about this 24, 25 mark. 5-year average for those is around about the 27 mark. So this is the average of the Mag 7 excluding Tesla, of course, because that would significantly drag the average up because it's all about forward things for them. But yeah, we, calendar-wise, and this is obviously a little bit difficult to see, but we've got Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, and Meta on the Wednesday. Advanced GDP and FOMC on the that's on the Thursday, which will be the Thursday morning. Leading into that, you've got FOMC, and then that Thursday night you've got advanced GDP with core PCE as well. So Wednesday, in the second column there, we've got Australian CPI. We're expected at 1.3%. And, obviously the RBA watchers will be watching that pretty closely. Durable goods in the States tomorrow night as well. Bank of Japan will be today. I don't expect too much out of that, but the Japanese do tend to be pretty good at surprising everyone. ANZ's actually got an update coming this week on Thursday as well, and then you got Apple on Friday. So Apple was off a little bit because apparently Qualcomm and OpenAI are looking at making a phone together. And then we did have some news last night that the exclusivity arrangement between OpenAI and Microsoft actually has been voided by both parties, so they can go and supply that to other people. I think that's, Microsoft was off quite a bit on the back of that. At one stage, it was off about 5%, but I think that's probably more, Microsoft's not giving up an exclusivity arrangement if they think that OpenAI is the platform moving forward. So that may be a bit of a window into potentially some poor sales on the AI side or the ChatGPT side from and with Microsoft potentially. So who knows there? But increasingly, we've got Anthropic sort of dominating, Grok and XAI dominating, and then there's a new model. There's a new DeepSeek model out as well, which is performing many of these tasks. The Chinese developers have really narrowed in the performance gap, and they're essentially within striking distance of most of the main models now. Whereas they were significantly behind sort of in 2023, they're just behind now, mainly level peaking, I suppose. China's research blitz for AI, they have now, they've registered 3 times the amount of patents in AI than their closest rival in the US in the last sort of 3 years. So we've got, like I said, we've got a lot ahead. For the week ahead, it's really going to be dominated by those earnings. I would imagine they're going to probably buoy the market generally. I don't see anything happening too much. The only freak out might be on the capex spending. You probably see if they read the room and maybe tame back or whatever on the capex side, they'll probably see a bit of a bid. I would expect most of them will follow the same path as Meta and in reducing staff due to AI, and that's usually good for share prices as well. For those of you who are not, we are at record highs, albeit in the Nasdaq by 0.01%, and 0.1 in the S&P 500. For those of you who don't want to be buying up here and you think that the market's going to peel off, we've got buy the dip in the S&P 500 index, which is our new strategy. It's around about the 6-to-1 leverage mark. Seasonally, particularly in a midterm year, there's a very reliable dip between the middle of May and the middle of October. So scan the QR code, go and have a look at the videos on the landing page and grab the PDF. Statistically, it's a very good setup for this strategy. It only happens once every 4 years. And you get long the S&P 500 at the lowest Monday closing price or settlement price in the S&P 500 over the course of that first 6-month period, and that's your entry. And then you've got from middle of October out, you've got 2.5 years for it to play out, which just so happens to coincide with the the Trump presidency, and we all know that Trump's pretty much obsessed with the share market overall. well, that and himself. So yeah, but nothing much. I think the SPY was down around about 50 points or thereabouts overnight. Don't expect too much today, considering what's going on, in the forward calendar for this week. So expect a pretty quiet day, and yeah, we'll speak again tomorrow. Cheers, guys.
Feeling lost with investing? Meet Mosaic. Mosaic is MPC Markets' platform that turns confusing markets into clear, actionable guidance for your portfolio. Discover Mosaic today. Portfolio and trade ideas in one place for clients and subscribers, powered by MPC Markets.